While in Louisville, Kentucky, I was invited to tour the Old Forester Distillery on Whiskey Row. Guys, join us for the ride. You're sure to be in for a treat.
Y'all, our company was born out of a very particular context in the mid-1800s. Back then, maybe you're familiar, there's no rules or regulations on our industry. You are welcome to make whiskey, if you will, however you wanted. There would have been some very legitimate distillers making very respectable products. That's awesome. And then there's everybody else, really cutting every corner imaginable. There's lots of fraudulent whiskeys in the 1800s. People are making very cheap stuff in an attempt to make a quick buck. Throughout the 1800s, people are buying cheap, clear moonshines off of distillers and farmers. Clear alcohol is going into barrels and brown coloring is added to it. So in the same afternoon, it suddenly looks like an aged whiskey. Throughout this era, they found coffee, tea, prune juice, tobacco products, bitumen spit, and rusty nails in barrels from time to time. In my mind, there's kind of a large margin between that stuff and then like the real whiskey, but you're welcome to form your own opinions this afternoon. At the very same time, doctors depended on whiskey as the go-to cough medicine and painkiller of that era. Isn't that awesome? That did not work well. Patients are getting super sick and even dying, and that's being traced back to the lack of quality in the whiskey that they got a hold of in the first place. Those are the normal messed up problems in our industry. Back then, things really did not improve until a pharmaceutical sales rep in our town saw these problems firsthand. His name was George Garvin Brown. Like you, he thought this was altogether messed up, namely that doctors did not have any kind of exclusive access to safer whiskeys. Of all people that should have an in, they didn't. It's these ideas and these observations that leads George to get out of sales and into distilling in the year 1870 when he creates his own company called Old Forester. Back then, follow this, it was most common to sell whiskey straight from barrels to customers. This would have been super cost effective from like a supplier point of view, but this never afforded customers the opportunity to really see the product very well, a dark barrel. George would totally resolve this problem by becoming the first exclusively glass-bottled bourbon, where every cork was sealed and he signed his name to every label, personally guaranteeing that we would not cut corners. That was basically the promise. We would be the company that was trying to make high-quality whiskeys day in and day out, and the plan worked. By the end of the 1800s, George becomes the largest supplier of medicinal whiskey for the entire country. Go George. Now by 1882, George and his staff moved into this building. How about it? By the year 1910, we were then joined by over 89 documented whiskey-related businesses right here on Main Street. That's why it's got dubbed as the Wall Street of whiskey, or better yet, Whiskey Row. Like Whiskey Row, the entire alcohol industry is growing rapidly in our country at this point, which did make some people incredibly upset. Probably not you guys, but other people. There really was an entire anti-alcohol movement for like 2 decades that eventually led to Prohibition. Do any of y'all know the name of this movement? It was not the government's original idea to ban alcohol, it was the temperance movement. The temperance movement would prove itself to be a rather important movement, because they all together made some stuff happen in this country. So at the end of the day, the temperance people think that alcohol has become the biggest problem in our country, and to the point that you should not be entrusted with any amount of it. Okay, we're gonna take your side on this one today. We would also think that that's messed up. Okay, you're welcome. We would have serious fallout around here. Y'all, nobody would come to the Derby if there was any alcohol. Okay, that's kind of all that the Derby has really become at this point. Did you know that some people there don't really know that horse racing is going on? Okay, it's one of those situations. Okay, I'm not saying it's good or bad, just it's happening. Okay, so George, we're back to George. Our founder was not overly keen with the movement for the obvious reason that there's a massive threat to our entire industry. And so George publicly calls them out by publishing a book in the year 1910. It was called The Holy Bible Repudiates Prohibition, because when it all boils down, the temperance people believe the Bible completely prohibits alcohol. Our founder George was a good Presbyterian, and evidently homeboy read his Bible from front to back and knows that it's really not altogether prohibited. We found his thesis of his book so rich and endearing, we physically glued it to the wall behind me. Okay, that's what you've been looking at, right? We used real-life glue to make this happen. This could be your favorite part of the entire tour right here. George takes time out of his busy life to write a book to expose how dangerous Prohibition would be if it happened. So he's obviously trying to not let it happen and really speak out against the temperance movement. George's book is not that long. It's just a compiled list of every verse in the Bible mentioning alcohol. That is awesomely hilarious. He gets to the end of his list and draws a simple conclusion that he found all the verses for you, and none of them altogether prohibit it. He's like, guys, the Bible actually grants a religious liberty on this topic. You're in America. That was supposed to mean something to both the people and the government. Government really, in George's mind, has no business stripping anybody of religious freedoms, rights, liberties to make you an American citizen. You're supposed to like that part of the tour, okay? You can smile now. The reason why you guys have never heard of this book, we don't sell it in our gift shop. I wish we did. It is for sale for like $20 on Amazon. I would recommend that to you. But the point is that the temperance people were not persuaded. They weren't, just totally. Anyway, okay. So they didn't really love this book. They just continued to lobby hard in Congress, despite George exposing them, if you will. Sadly, it's the temperance movement with their faulty argument that wins out in the end and convinces the government. Our founder George was so disheartened by all of this and absolutely so disinterested to live through Prohibition that he actually died 2 years before it literally happened. Okay, that's a man after your own heart, which is rather not. Okay, he was like, no. I think that's awesome that George didn't see one day of Prohibition. In 1917, George died and left the company to his son, Owsley Brown. Owsley has a funny name, but he is a bit of a legend around here because upon taking over, it was just 2 years later that in 1919, the Volstead Act was passed through Congress. And by the beginning of 1920, Prohibition, sadly and shockingly, is in full swing. This stinks. That's an understatement. Owsley is supposed to be the next George and continue on the company into many generations, and the government's destroying all these dreams for the Brown family. This is where we see Owsley demonstrate some resiliency. He's got one thing figured out, and it's an important thing here. Doctors have been prescribing juice long before Prohibition, and they're going to continue to prescribe juice throughout Prohibition because y'all still need to stay healthy. That's important. You should nod at this point as well. Okay, healthiness, whiskey. So the government's aware that if doctors are going to continue prescribing, then there's got to be some suppliers involved, right? That makes sense. The government only issued 6 medicinal licenses, but Owsley landed one of them. Y'all, we remained open in broad daylight all through Prohibition, bottling products for doctors, watching everyone else get shut down. That was awesome. Okay, what this physically would have looked like is we were allowed to continue bottling from what we already had aging. We are not allowed to continue more production. That should hopefully sound like a temporary fix to you. This concept would work okay for about 9 years. 9 years into Prohibition. In 1929, the government could see that we were all running out, and so they granted all 6 of us a very quick 100-day period to distill as much as we wanted. Owsley kind of went ham and distilled over 100,000 proof gallons. He was filling thousands of barrels and happily restocking rickhouses. That made him smile, and it made some other people smile. It's called the federal government. Y'all, they tax us every single time we fill a barrel. That's still true this day, but most importantly in this story, it was true back then. So the government is racking up millions of dollars of tax revenue very quickly because 6 distillers just filled thousands of barrels. This kind of revenue would have come as a massive relief to the government because this all went down in the same year the Great Depression started. If you would just fast forward 4 years from that moment, that would bring you up to the end of Prohibition. Does anybody know how long Prohibition lasted for in our country? Too long? Is that what you said? Yeah. Prohibition lasts longer than most people have stopped to realize. It is a total of 13 very trying, dark, depressing years. Okay. 13 years that you and I would probably not be able to handle at this point in our lives. Okay, that would be a tough one for us. On December 5th of 1933, the government apologized and announced they'd be willing to repeal the act and forget the whole Prohibition thing. That was awesome, but there's one massive problem that defines the whole industry. There's not a lot of whiskey available. The government was way too good at raiding all these bootlegging operations throughout Prohibition and just destroying all the products they came across. After Prohibition ends, people are scrambling to begin the process of making products, aging them, bottling them, and distributing them. Y'all look like you know 1 or 2 things about whiskey. That right there is like a 4 to 5 year timeline before local liquor stores would be restocked with wine, whiskey, and anything else that ages. Yikes. Owsley is not in that situation. Owsley happens to have 4-year-old barrels, and thousands of them, because it had been 4 full years at this point from when the government allowed him to do all that distilling. While everyone else was starting from scratch, we were already sitting on a bunch of aged juice, day one immediately, ready to go. This effectively put us years ahead of the rest of the competition, and we will be honest with you this afternoon, we were okay with how that worked out for us. Okay. Now, we've not stayed in this building the entire time. We left in 1919, and we moved to the other side of town. That is still where the majority of our production is done, but they've never done tours over there, so you're really not missing out. A bunch of years passes, and in 2018, we bought back the building and moved back in and reopened as a fully operating distillery. Y'all, we were able to handle a small percentage here. The building was purchased back by our current leader, Campbell Brown. Campbell is a 5th generation grandson of George. We have actually been family owned this entire time, leaving Old Forester to be the only family owned distillery that has been consecutively opened from way before Prohibition, all through it, and since. That is an actual 155-year proud standing legacy that we have no intention of stopping on, you guys, anytime soon. And that, my friends, is the story of Old Forester. Kind of crazy, right? Y'all, this is Nash on its 2nd day of fermentation. Smells like beer, bread, pretzels, from the yeast, stuff like that. Our yeast strain, let me highlight this for y'all. Our yeast strain is what we would say a little bit more fruit forward. What we're trying to say is it kind of smells like apples, maybe pears, or even bananas. Okay? You wouldn't have been crazy if you kind of walked over here and like, what does that smell? Okay? This thing is going to continue to ferment right here for the next 2 to 3 more days. It'll become very obvious. If you've not ever seen a finished tank in your life, it becomes very obvious when a tank is done fermenting because there's no activity. The bubbles stop. There's no heat. Y'all can put your hand out over the surface and feel a good amount of heat. Y'all, that is natural heat. Isn't that crazy? There's no heater beneath the tank. In fact, the coils that you saw in tank 1 aren't heating coils, those are cooling coils. The heat's natural, and that heat can eventually become a real problem for the yeast. Thank you for saying that. Okay. For the yeast. Yeast will die around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Your tanks can naturally get that warm. You would not want your tank to prematurely stop fermenting, so chilled water pumped through coils. We might be doing that tomorrow, right? If this thing continues to get warmer than it already is. So we just filled this thing yesterday, and it's already doing super great. Tank 3 behind me is being steam cleaned. That looks like clamping a tarp down and using a pipe to pump in a bunch of steam. That's a great way to kill every bit of bacteria, like steaming your own pots and pans. That is not necessary to do between cleaning every batch of mash. What we would typically do is, there's 2 hoses in here, one behind you, and then there's one on the back wall for the back tanks. In a few days from now, when this thing's done and we've drained it out, some mash will stay stuck to the walls and coils. That's normal, happens every time. We'll just spray that down with water patiently until everything comes off, and then we discard that, leaving the tank as clean as tank 1 is. Okay, so you don't need, it's a little bit more tedious to do that. You don't need to do that between every batch.
So you said not proprietary yeast? Just whatever yeast you get your hands on? Or?
It is proprietary.
Proprietary, okay.
Sure. By the end of fermentation, 10% of the tank would be pure alcohol. Now, we're not going to fill our barrels with pure alcohol for multiple reasons, but with the alcohol that we will have produced, we'll fill about 14 barrels of ours. Those barrels are standard size of 53 gallons.
This is 14 gallons?
Yeah.
How much will this drop in probably like level-wise?
Not at all.
There's not moisture coming up? Okay.
Yeah, we'll stay the same level.
It's just heavier product of it? Like, why is that so much hotter over there than more product over there? More.
Oh, you're saying the consistency?
It's got a whole boiling test.
This is going fast.
Our side's boiling more than his side.
That's fair. That's fair.
It's because we dipped our finger in the side.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's Old Forester's secret.
I don't know why some parts of the tank begin to thicken quicker than others. It's actually less about that there's like more bubbles over there than over here. It's more like this side just thickening, and it's harder for the bubbles. The same amount of bubbles, but it's harder to get through the thickened surface. By tomorrow, everything will look like this, and that thinner stuff kind of. Don't y'all just love the smell of mash in the afternoon?
I do.
We're headed to the back door. Watch your head. Let's look at this one. This is not George, but it is a depiction of his friend, Dr. William Forester. He had a very accomplished career. He was a surgeon in the Civil War, took up his medical practice here in town, became a famous and well-connected medical doctor. Towards the end of his career, him and George are good friends and neighbors in Old Louisville. They were kind of posted up over there. They had some nice big homes. And George would have known the old doctor while George was a recent high school grad. George was originally from Mumfordville, Kentucky, and had come up here to Male High School, Jewett High School. That's the name of the high school for those of you who are coming from out of town. And anyway, George graduates high school and he gets into pharmaceutical sales. But he's neighbors with the grumpy old doctor guy who was so bothered by the lack of quality in whiskey being supplied to doctors that it was becoming clear to George that he was in the wrong career. So at the age of 24, imagine that, George gets out of sales and into distilling and lets a famous doctor endorse his medicinal whiskey brand. That is called marketing. This launches in 1870. We've experienced enough success over the years to grow and acquire other brands. This led to the formation of a parent company today known as Brown-Forman. Brown is the family that has owned us this entire time. Foreman was George's first accountant, who was later promoted as a key partner. Today, Brown-Forman also owns Woodford Reserve, Jack Daniels, Cooper's Craft, El Humidor, Fort's Gin, Diplomatico, Corbel, Chambord, a handful of Scotch companies like Glentronic and Ben Rioch, even Slane Irish Whiskey, and a castle out in Ireland. So as we like to say around here, the Brown family does okay for themselves. Full circle means that Old Forester is the founding success to that mothership today. I really do like this wall for how simple it keeps things, right? This is, even if you've done a gazillion tours, this really is just a nice like full picture of like what the heck is going on. You guys got to see one tank of mash downstairs. That was fun for y'all. We don't make any of the mash in this building. We rely on our main campus. Our main campus is right next to Stitzel-Weller in the Shively neighborhood of Louisville. Main campus makes our mash for us each day. About 10 tractor trailer loads of grains arrive. The grains will arrive whole grain. We'll need to crush them first, which is better known as milling. You all said milling. Very good, guys. Very good. Milled grains are thrown into a large tank, water is added, and this is heated to cook the grains for a few hours. The cooking of grains in water is the part that's known as mashing. Once you cook and cool your grains, or better yet, just let them cool down, you can then add yeast. They will fill tanker trucks with this and drive it, haul it over to us. So anyways, that's how we filled tank 2 yesterday morning. Mash got pumped in, came in on the top of tank 2, and it only took like 30 minutes to fill that big drum. You saw some empty tanks, we've got more space for more mash. In a few days from now, all those crazy bubbles and all that heat will totally slow down in tank 2 and come to a full stop. The surface will begin to thicken even more, not dry out like a pie crust, but just thicken, and it'll smell even sweeter than it did. At that point, day 5, we're ready to start agitating, churn it up, and drain it out. Mash will exit through the tank, pass through the beer heater to make that mash warm so that we've got warm mash pumping into our column still. Anybody know for a fact that they've been at a distillery that uses pot stills? Okay, 3 of y'all. We'll chat after the tour. There's just a very different type of still you could use here. Warm mash is pumped into the still, okay? The thing is going down. There are 19 copper plates sitting throughout the still, denoted by these dotted lines. You're like, what would one of those look like? I'm glad you asked. We screwed one to the barrel behind you guys. All of the mash in tank 2 in a few days from now will get pumped in and start flowing through the plates that are in the still. Mash is pumped in 3/4 of the way up and begins to flow down. The plates slow down the flow. Meanwhile, we're going to try to get the alcohol to come out. Every distillery gets alcohol to separate by heating up their still. When the alcohol gets so warm that it evaporates and rises like steam to the top. Does anybody know alcohol's evaporation point? It's less than water's boiling point. It's 172 degrees Fahrenheit, well below 212 where water is at. Okay. They have not changed water's boiling point, by the way, since you've been in high school. Okay. Put that out there. We're not talking about like astronomical numbers here. There really are like home distilling kits on Amazon right now. You could be a home distiller in 2 days from now, right? Like that's what prime shipping means for you in your life, okay? Okay. So just think 172 as you leave today. Mash goes in and goes down. We just need to heat up the still a little bit so the alcohol gets warm and it evaporates. The alcohol evaporates and rises to steam at the top. The rest of your yellow mash flows to the bottom. When it gets to the bottom, we would call it stillage. Stillage is your spent grains. We're done with it. We will sell it off to farms in Kentucky. They will use it as cattle feed, resulting in an unending amount of dad jokes related to tipsy cows or happy cows, bourbon cream, steak. You'll figure it out this afternoon, okay? The stillage goes down and out. The rest of the alcohol is separated from there. It's going through a tube with cooling coils in it. When vapors of any kind are cooled enough, they'll just condense back into their liquid form. So you should not be surprised that next you would see a clear, high-proof alcohol liquid flowing out of our first spirit safe. Typically, this is around 120 proof for us, like 60% alcohol. You would be welcome to call this moonshine. We would call this white dog, white lightning, new make, or distillate. It's some crazy stuff. These two spirit safes are in the wall behind you guys. It's those two pipes. It's not strange that they're not flowing because we've got nothing but we're distilling right now. In a few days from now, it'll be tank 2 that's draining and being distilled. It takes us kind of 5 to 6 hours to drain a tank entirely. So for 5 to 6 hours, both of those pipes will just be flowing with clear alcohol. It's the right side. That's this first one. You could barrel 120 proof white dog if you wanted to. We would be like lots of other distilleries who are not interested in barreling that right away. We have a second distillation in place to purify it, simply an attempt to make a higher quality product. So 120 proof white dog, we'll just mosey on into the doubler. This is the first thing you saw on our elevator. You guys remember that? Okay. That was like 5 minutes ago, just to be clear. Okay, right. So the doubler will just heat up the alcohol back into vapors. This is the second distillation. Second time the alcohol went from a liquid into a vapor. This strips the alcohol of water and lots of impurities called sulfates. With all the steam coming out of the doubler, we'll send it through a second condenser. It is identical, just a second one. Having cooled our vapors, they'll then flow out of the less spirit safe, now up around 140 proof, like 70% alcohol. Anybody know off the top of their head the maximum bourbon distillers are allowed to distill in proof?
120?
It's a bit higher. We're going to come back to that though. Okay, a 160 proof, 80%. Okay, which is pretty up there, isn't it? Pretty up there. Okay. Yeah.
Is that where the heads and tails go away, or is it?
Yes and no. Heads, hearts, and tails is really a category that's entirely wrapped up in the pot distilling world. Column still fundamentally produces a much more consistent distillate as opposed to pot stills producing 3 kind of very distinct.
So is that one of the taller column stills, or the people that do taller column stills than that?
Yeah, I don't think we were trying to flex, so we're like, yeah.
So essentially the column still, it pretty much gets rid of the heads and tails and you only get the hearts kind of coming out, I guess. Is that correct?
Yes. All I was really trying to locate there, sir, was that those terms are most like wrapped up in the hot distilling world. We would still need to be careful of what we're pulling first and last. We just wouldn't, in the column distilling world, we just don't think of it quite as distinctly, if that makes sense. But it is true that altogether the distillate is typically far more consistent. Okay. Where were we? Okay, so yeah, we can't distill any higher than 160 proof. But we're doing good, aren't we? Down at 140 proof. We're not breaking federal law there. Okay, go us. Now, that's great to distill. 140 proof is a nice balance between flavor and purity. That's what we're really striving for. You cannot put that into a barrel. There's a range you can fill new barrels at. Do you know the minimum entry proof for bourbon barrels? 80. That's correct. And the maximum is 125. You're so close, okay? I'd be willing to give you a partial credit. Yeah. We're gonna need to bring 140 proof down. That looks like heading down into a tank beneath our feet. They're adding enough Kentucky limestone water to make that happen. We prefer to fill all of our barrels at that max entry proof, so we're just needing to get it down to 125. Once our white dog is proofed down, it's headed for a barrel. Before we head over there, were there other questions about our distillation process?
So people will barrel at 80 proof? I thought they always barrel higher and just add water later. The barrel it?
I don't know anybody that is that their entry proof is 80 proof.
Oh, I think you said the minimum was the minimum for bourbon has to be 80. Okay.
Yeah, it's just the federal law. I don't know anybody who's actually doing it, but yeah.
That's what White Claw's made of.
Yeah, your barrels will be taxed each year if they're aging, regardless of the proof. So you might as well have it more economically. You absolutely might as well have it at the most concentrated point, and then later proof it down, rather than start something that's so low proof. Yeah. Other questions?
Do you happen to know the tax per percentage of barrel proof off the top of your
I
head?
don't. Yeah, no, I don't.
But is it like, so if I barrel it at 140, is it significantly higher tax or the same as me barreling it at 80?
Oh no, I think it's the same.
It's the same, okay.
Yeah, regardless of the proof. Yeah. Yeah.
This is the souvenir we get to take home, right?
Yeah, of course. Each one of you guys can roll out a barrel the rest of the way. Good luck. I'm trying to make this little lampshade shape out of them. Usually it's like 25 to 26 different staves. It's like a puzzle. Like the last piece can't be too loose, can't be too tight, or else you'll figure it out here when you go to tighten it all together. It's too tight, it's gonna snap right in my face. And nobody wants that.
That's true.
Was this Kentucky wood or was this wood from?
No, it's really not necessarily Kentucky. We are sourcing our white American oak from 13 different states. Although we really do mostly source from the Ozarks and Appalachia regions. That's where white oak grows most aggressively around here. We've been making all of our own barrels since 1945. So that's definitely a pretty awesome thing. Once Kendrick makes a lampshade, he'll bring it over here, spray it down with water, and the heating process is only about to just begin. This thing will need to heat up for 15 minutes. This kind of exposure to some water and heat will loosen up the wood to allow us to cinch with the steel cables and pulley system with the hopes that it doesn't snap in half, sending pieces flying violently in all directions. Okay, you can only hope, right? That's not much we can do around here. Right? We're just people. So the heating process is about to begin. That'll be 15 minutes before anything else happens here. In 15 minutes from now, we'll be able to cinch it into one of these things. The next place is the toaster, that cage right there, like that barrel inside the cage. Toasting is pretty gnarly. It is like 1500 degrees of indirect heat. That is not the char, which is why you're not seeing any flames there. We happen to toast all of our barrels before we char. The toasting process of the heating column going into the middle of the barrel is going to break down all the natural sugars that are in the wood and draw the sugars come in towards the surface. Once we toast for 15 minutes with a lot of heat, we'll send it off to the char. It's the flames of the char that will then caramelize those sugars, creating a creme brulee effect, now lining the inside walls of our barrels. To be perfectly clear, toasting is not a bourbon requirement. You're welcome to skip that. We keep this intact because we really love that dynamic duo. We really think it's going to maximize what's naturally happening in the barrels for us. Here's a fun question for you all. If a distillery only toasts their barrels and they don't char it, and they age their white dog in a barrel like that for a bunch of years, do we know what kind of product that would be called? Yes, and more specifically a toasted whiskey. Toasted whiskey has become so popular that lots of different brands right now make toasted whiskeys. What that label's trying to indicate to you is that the cooperage that made the barrels for that distillery simply only toasted the barrels for 15 minutes at the shorter end, or maybe longer, 45 minutes. But either way, they never charred the barrels, leaving the products far lighter in color, having aged in a lighter colored walls, and not satisfying all of the legal rules for bourbon. So you did not make bourbon if your juice didn't age in charred barrels. So it's just toasted barrels are awesome products, but that's going to leave it as a toasted whiskey. Like chars, there's a range in the toasting process. We are on the much lighter end at just 15 minutes of toasting. And then from there, we're still going to char our barrels to make some bourbon today. Would y'all have any interest in seeing a barrel get charred? Okay. to our warehouse that we examined, the kind of large collectively has 350,000 barrels over there. The Commonwealth of Kentucky this afternoon has over 14. So barrels thrive aging in Kentucky because of our crazy weather all the time. We have all 4 to 6 seasons, but that doesn't even do it justice. Like, you know how warm it is today, and you know how cold it has been? Because barrels are made out of wood, and there's constant fluctuations, they're constantly swelling when it gets warm, pulling bourbon into the walls of the barrel, and then constantly contracting and squeezing the juice right back out. So that flow in and out is developing all the color and well over 50% in flavor. Distilleries are different standards for when they will harvest. We do not harvest barrels any younger than 4 to 6 years old, even for our bottom shelf products. We think the color of our products are a testament to that. This warehouse is small, way smaller than the other 7. It's also climate controlled in here and held at this constant temperature year round as an experiment to see what the heck would happen. The first barrel we ever rolled in is the one with all the staff signatures on it behind that claw down there. It's okay if you can't see it. We're gonna walk past it in a minute. That thing is 6.5 years old. We've tried some of the older barrels in here and have confirmed they're doing well. They're aging at a way slower rate. This will take a few additional years before they become mature. We will release this one day to the public, but that's a few years out. We currently don't have a name, release date, or a concept in place. This afternoon, we would just still tell you we're in the middle of our experiment, and it's been going okay so far. I think you're smelling like yeah, we've got bourbon-scented candles in a barrel warehouse. Well, anyways, that's not the point. The point is that, right, we typically see evaporation of like 5 to 6% of the volume of our barrels each year. So yes, by the time we're harvesting, y'all, at the 6-year mark, we've easily lost 30% of our barrel. That explains why 10, 12, 15-year-old bourbons at any distillery are freakishly expensive, because there's not a lot left of it. It's very difficult for any distillery to have a lot of old bourbon. Way easier to have, you know, a bunch of the much younger stuff. Okay, not to be redundant. We stay very busy with private selections of single barrel picks. In this room in particular, that platform you just walked around is what we utilize to handle that. Bars, restaurants, and liquor stores are dying to privately select a single barrel from us that they would then literally own and have bottled and be able to pour at their bars or sell at their liquor stores. This is huge in our industry, right? You guys are tracking with this. I'm assuming a lot right now. There's like a 2-year wait list for us. We'll charge the client 10 to 15 grand per barrel that they buy from us. They will try 3 mature barrels, and they'll just pick one of them on that platform. We will dump it down here, filter it, and bottle it right here in this building. We can generally fill about 100 to 240 barrel strength bottles from one 6-year-old barrel. At barrel strength, 125, 130, 135 proof, kind of depends on climate and temperature. We always offer our accounts the opportunity to proof down to 100 proof for the single barrels. That's not popular. Maybe only 20% of clients take that option. But the number one perk is the obvious perk that you'd be increasing volume, which means more bottles would be headed in your direction. Each and every account is given that opportunity. When you dump a barrel, upwards of 2 to 3 gallons of bourbon can stay saturated in the wood. That's very normal. We are not upset by this extra loss because all of our used barrels stay in-house as they're shipped across the world to Brown-Forman sister companies making scotches, Irish whiskeys, tequilas, rums, gins, and wines. Once they're covered, then our surplus barrels are put on the secondary multi-million-dollar market for a used bourbon barrel. The barrels themselves will live on some crazy 50 to 70 more years, being reused for all of these other kinds of products. Questions about warehouses or maturation?
What's the consistency after like 15 years? Does the consistency change at all, or is it still?
Did you say
The consistency of the liquid inside one, does it change after 15 years?
15? Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's thick and jelly or?
Yeah, not jelly, but yeah, definitely the consistency gets much softer and silkier.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So speaking of consistency, when I have my Glencairn and I swirl it and I see those like thick oily legs coming down,
Yeah.
what's giving it that characteristic?
Sure. Bourbon as natural element is a rather oily, smooth substance. It's just the result of some alcohol, water, and all those natural sugars in the oak. And so bourbon as natural element at a higher proof is very oily as a result of the aging process And so long as you haven't tremendously proofed down that liquid, you're going to be rolling something in your glass that is actually very, very oily. As far as the chemical makeup of the liquid, I wouldn't really have anything more specific to share with you this afternoon. Yeah, above my pay grade. Depends on how old the barrel is, but when we're harvesting around maybe 6-year-old single barrels, it generally feels somewhere between 100 to 200. Everything in front of y'all is a blend of barrels that are maybe 4 to 6 years old. That is typical for Old Forester, unless otherwise stated that it's older.
Is there a price point correlation to what we're trying to?
Yes, there just so happens to be. So we have arranged this tasting in chronological order based off of the names of the bottles, right? But they do happen to be in a price point order. So this is like they start at $45, and they're just kind of chronologically working up to around 62. We will be tasting from left to right this afternoon. I'd invite you to reach the far left side of your stage. This is our 1870, it's 90 proof. I'd invite you to pick it up and smell it, some gentle sniffs. Really don't burn your nose here. Very light vanillas, light caramels, and hints of cherries here on the nose, glass one. They say you could get a lot of clove, like spice. I have to tell you that I really hardly ever get
Smells like a mash.
on the nose. Okay. A little bit more forward with a cherry note. Okay, so for your acclimating sip, I always invite people to take this kind of slow to settle a little bit on your palate. You're welcome to move that around if you wanted to. Just don't rush through it and then swallow gently. Cheers, y'all. It is 90 proof. Your first story takes you back to the year our company starts. This tells you our origin story. Our company starts in 1870. Now, George initially is a blender. He's not a distiller right away. What that physically looked like is that he was buying barrels off of 3 different reputable distilleries here in town, the Melwood, Mattingly, and Atherton distilleries. Those were in existence a long time ago. We try to recreate how George was originally batching his barrels. He was batching his barrels from 3 distilleries. We make this today by batching from 3 warehouses. He was bottling at 90 proof originally. We're now bottling it at 90 proof as well.
So didn't they get recipes for the
No, I mean, there's no saying what those mash bills were of those distilleries or what his blend was going to accomplish as far as flavor profiles. Yeah, we're not at all arguing that it would taste anything like his original product.
All right.
Yeah. This is a smaller batch right here, y'all. Sometimes we will blend a few hundred barrels together. This is much smaller, only 21 barrels are selected at a time to make that happen. A smaller batch is a subjective term in our industry. It doesn't mean a specific number. For us, smaller batch here is looking like 21 as opposed to hundreds. Okay. Sometimes we get people a little bit confused about what we're serving them, like a lot more confused. Sometimes people think that we've served them bourbon from 1870. That's a whole other story, okay? A whole other story that you weren't even venturing out into, okay? I'll be honest, right? But to be perfectly clear with those folks, y'all, that is not what $32 will ever get you in this building, okay? There is no promo code to make that happen in your life, okay? Sorry, okay? Right? We weren't ever claiming it was that good. We're like, hey, have you tried our 5 to 6 year old stuff? It's not 150 years old, but it's worth trying. I can almost guarantee you that that second or third sip maybe goes down a little bit more easily. That is what we mean by acclimation, that once your palate gets coated in whiskey, everything thereafter could go down a little bit more easily.
You're totally correct.
Yeah, it's always that first smell and sip that's kind of the strongest experience, right? Right?
Yes.
For real. Y'all, we're gonna try to stay on time today. We're headed to the second inn on the left. This is our 1897. It is 100 proof. I would invite you to pick up and smell it. You should not be surprised if it smells and tastes different. This is an entirely different lineup of barrels, blended at different ratios, creating an entirely different blend from the first product we've tried. This is our 1897. Very sweet on the nose. Yes, to your vanillas and caramels, but a thick sweetness like a butterscotch on the nose, glass 2. You're welcome to sip on this one. Cheers, y'all. The 100 proof.
To me, the higher the proof, the smoother it is.
That's right. That kind of ties into that conversation we were starting in our warehouse, where we were talking about kind of just the oily smoothness and viscosity, to kind of use a nerdy term, describing how the higher proof the product, kind of the smoother it is.
Smoother it is.
Yeah. Hey, y'all, here comes your second story. Prior to 1897, there's no rules. If you wanted to have a thriving fraudulent whiskey business in our country, you would be welcome to that. No rules. This becomes a public health crisis. The government is aware that doctors prescribe juice that turned out to be fraudulent. People are dying. In 1897, the U.S. government passes the first Consumer Protection Act in American history. It was called the Bottled in Bond Act, and it predates our FDA by 9 entire years. America has literally always prioritized the quality of your whiskey before food or drugs. Thank God bless. Should we hold hands? Okay. These are your country's national priorities. Under the Bottled and Bond Act, there would be a small list of key rules that would make a massive difference over whether or not the process of making the product was safe or not, safe to be consumed, right? So, first rule under the Act, you have to make the entirety of your product under one roof and one distiller, so products are easily trackable. Second rule, your barrels must age for a minimum 4 years. You are welcome to exceed the 4-year minimum, so long as all the barrels stay the same age as they're blended. If you want to do a 10-year bottle and bond, you can do that as long as all your barrels are 10 years. You have to age your barrels in locked up warehouses. Distillers would not have had free access to barrels to ensure that nobody had tampered with them after hours. Those would have been known as bonded warehouses. You had a bottle at 100 proof and sealed the cork. That's it. If you can follow the rules, you get the stamp. If you can't follow the rules, you don't get the stamp. Well, this turns out to make a massive difference, whether your products say bottle and bond on them or not. For the first time ever, any consumer walking into any liquor store would be able to identify which products are the ones that are safe, authentic, and at least 4 years old, and which ones are not. Unstamped products would have been a dead giveaway. Those are still the fraudulent ones. Or at the very least, made at a distillery with no standards. The choice is yours. Guess what Americans did? Just like you, they preferred to put their money into something that they knew what they were going to get in return. Bottle and bond became the hottest type of product. The plan works. The much better, safer whiskey, higher quality whiskey is born at this moment, which is why it's so noteworthy. There's lots of distilleries today still making an old school bottle and bond. We are commemorating the single most important thing that ever happened in our industry. You still have to follow those list of rules in honoring it today.
So there's other groups that label 10-year bottle and bond or 9-year, or is it certain? 4 is minimum.
4 is minimum. Yeah, we've got one other bottle and bond here in our portfolios in our 117 series. That's an 8-year, and it'll tell you that on the label.
You don't have 117 here for sale today, do we?
No, but we do have 1924, so you're in luck.
I already got one of those in the locker downstairs.
Yes.
Grab that for you. And then they had many left, so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna get this.
Yeah. You can see how we're running out of options very quickly at this point, right? Okay.
I'm still waiting on that blue label.
Okay.
At the end of the tour.
Good for you.
know?
Good for you. Yes. Hey y'all, we are headed to the third in on the left. The third in on the left is what we call the 1910. It's 93 proof. And some people have described this third one as not that bad, so I hope you enjoy it, okay? The nose is incredibly sweet, French vanillas. If you smell bananas around tank 2 of mash, you could be smelling hints of sweet bananas here on the nose, glass 3. You're welcome to indulge, it's a good one.
Oh, I definitely do smell that bananas.
Yeah, like a very sweet, kind of banana foster.
That's good, yeah.
Smooth.
Very smooth.
It'll do.
Anybody else? Not that bad? Not terrible?
Not that bad.
I like it.
Yeah. Third story in October of 1910. Terrible fire broke out here on Whiskey Row. And it's not long before our building also engulfed in flames. The bottle line was freaking out. That would be a bunch of flammable unsold product. The bottle line was more than aware that the company might as well go under if this much product was lost. They were scrambling to do what they could to save the business. Bourbon was being quickly pulled off the line. It was being rebarreled and rolled out our back doors. Good for them. Day of the fire, they saved a ton of bourbon. Bad for them. The fire proved to be devastating and it took us like a year or two to clean up from. Barrels would not exactly been a part of the priority in getting our, head on straight, feet back on the ground. It's after about a year or two that we got back around to the barrels that had been refilled on the day of the fire. Now it's pretty low expectations, so we're thinking clearly about all this. Products aren't really supposed to be exposed to flames and smoke, so they had pretty low expectations. And yet when they tried it, they were kind of mind blown over how much sweeter and smoother and more mellow the product had now gotten. So they were kind of like, honestly guys, this is much better than what we usually make. So they were bottling it as Old Fine Whiskey, pretending this was their best idea yet. Okay. Today, the 1910 Old Fine Whiskey tells you the story of that fire. It's also trying to tell you the story of the first known double-barreled bourbon. Today, the process for making the 1910 is going to be a little bit different. The 1910 does begin, like everything else, we're aging medium charred barrels for 4 to 6 years in different areas throughout our warehouses. After 4 to 6 years, we will blend barrels that taste different from one another to create a really complementary, complex, dynamic blend of different barrels coming together. With a blend of mature bourbon, we'll take that and use it to fill a bunch of second, brand new, heavily charred barrels. Bourbon will age in that second barrel for 9 months, and then we'll bottle it here at 93 proof. Can you all see how much darker in color this third bottle is? Double-barreled bourbons always get darker in color, sweeter, and more mellow, because that's the effect that a second brand new barrel is going to have on what was otherwise already mature bourbon. This would be comparable to Woodford Double Oaked. Our sister distillery makes the most infamous double-barreled bourbon in our industry. We are headed to the far right side of your stave. We call this the 1920. I happen to love the nose here. There's a sweetness on the nose of your last glass, like a maple sweetness, almost like maple syrup sweetness. Otherwise, much darker, richer notes. It's full of mahogany, dark chocolates, dark cherries. You're welcome to indulge when you're ready. Cheers to your last one.
Smells like an old fashioned.
Yeah, it smells nice, doesn't it?
How many proof is this on this?
It's a lot. It's a lot of proofs.
150. Put at least 3 or 4 in the bottle.
Yeah, we'll get there if that's okay. We'll get
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. In the meantime, friends, I would
Spoiler
love
alert.
to direct your attention to what's on your napkin. This is a Old Forester Classic. What you are welcome to is a marshmallow that's been dipped in bourbon-infused caramel, which was then dipped in dark chocolate and then sprinkled with bourbon smoked sea salt, just to make sure you would truly never forget the day you came to Old Forester. You are seriously welcome to those things. In the meantime, here comes your last story. Friends, this last one is called the 1920 Prohibition Style. There were only 6 distilleries that remained open legally during Prohibition. We are the only one of the 6 that is still open and operating today under the same name. The other 5 were great, and they were later on bought out and absorbed by really large distilleries you've all heard of. We're trying to tell you the story of the time that young Owsley demonstrated nothing but grit, determination, and perseverance to figure out a way to honor his dad's legacy and save the family business. Owsley succeeds by landing a medicinal license. He was bottling for doctors at 115 proof all through Prohibition, and that is what we have styled for you in Glass 4. Glass 4 is 115 proof, which leaves it as one of our more robust products that we make. It's robust right there in the flavor profile with some robust spice with undertones of sweetness. Talking about mouthfeel and texture, viscosity and oily smoothness at a higher proof. It does take on a rather robust mouthfeel, and it does come with a little bit of a longer lasting, kind of full-bodied, well-rounded finish. The fuzzies with the last one kind of stick around a little bit longer.
And it tastes great with this.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah. The third product.
Mike, what's going on?
Yeah. Hold on your chair. Yeah. The third one has a little bit of like a shorter, softer finish. You know, it's like easy and kind of nice. But the third one, like you might still be feeling it. Are you still feeling it? Yeah. Just put on your sunglasses. Yeah. There you go. The rest of you doing okay with the chocolate whiskey combination? Does that work out for y'all? I have a few announcements for you. We sell more of those chocolates in our gift shop, and the chocolates have become our #1 seller. More than anything else that is sold. Anything else.
So the stuff that we see that's
Yes, sir.
ever present, it's just a combination of just a homogeneous blend to make it every year the same?
Yeah, that's a great question. Y'all, the bottles that are on display in the middle of the table in front of y'all are our most core essential product. If a liquor store was only going to carry 1 to 2 to 3 types of Old Forester, it would be the first 3. With the blue label being the first one as the flagship, that's our 86 proof. Second would likely be that orange label, the signature 100 proof. That's my favorite, not that you asked. And the green label is not a bourbon. Green label is a rye whiskey. We're a little bit of a softer rye mash bill, just 65% rye. And the rest is balanced out with some corn and barley, as opposed to those high rye mash bills. If a liquor store had a limited availability or offering of Old Forester product, these. To further your question, yes, these are much higher batches. They're not exactly smaller batches. Maybe 100, 200, and maybe 300 barrels at a time that get blended.
Is there an average age?
Yes, 4 to 6 years. We take a lot of pride in the fact that our bottom shelf products are not yellow in color, right? That's indicating the length of time that that the barrels were given to age.
Any staves or just a straight barrel? Like,
Nope. Yep. We're not makers, but yep.
Is the 100 proof comparable to like the bottle and bond that you have over there? Or
Yeah, it's gonna be I've not
different
tried
flavor
them
notes?
immediately side by side. They will be a different batch. I do think off the top of my head, the Signature 100 proof, the orange label, will be a little bit sweeter than this. This will still have a little bit more spice involved because it is a different lineup of barrels. There's way more barrels going into that batch to begin with.
So good with chocolate.
But yeah, you would probably notice some similarities. Yeah, totally. All right, y'all. My name's Noah, and I'm out of time. Did you guys have a good time at Old Forester today? Was that cool? Yeah, thanks for being here, y'all. We're a great group today. I appreciate y'all being engaged and whatnot.